So Kamala Harris spoke to the NAACP, and she said something that everybody kind of, just glossed over, but I paused and reflected on it, and it's a little ominous. So let's take a look, and then we'll discuss.
We will hold social media platforms accountable for the hate infiltrating their platforms because they have a responsibility. If you profit off of hate, if you act as a megaphone for misinformation or cyber warfare, if you don't police your platforms, we are going to hold you accountable as a community.
What does that mean? What does that mean? Listen, you're a senator. You're a senator. So what you're talking about, you're threatening legal action. What does that mean? We're going to go after social media if they don't crack down on hate and cyber warfare and misinformation. I'll tell you how I interpret it. You tell me if you think I'm wrong. But when I hear that, what I hear is the whole cyber warfare thing is like, oh, here we go. Russia is going to attack our election, and we need to make sure that social media like Twitter and Facebook are cracking down on Russian disinformation and misinformation. But that argument can be used to crack down on anybody who's parroting a line that's not in agreement with the U.S. establishment. When I come out here and I talk about how we need to get out of Syria, a bunch of idiots will pop up and say, you're doing Putin's bidding. It can't be that I have a principled belief that we shouldn't do offensive wars against countries that don't attack us. No. It has to be, you're doing Putin's bidding. So you see the problem with this? You can't. There's certain things that they're not going to allow you to say. We were talking about it the other day, but if you're axing people, because like Paul Joseph Watson, they kicked off of Facebook, and okay, I mean, he was affiliated with Alex Jones, and he did dabble in some 9/11 conspiracy stuff, but outside of that, he just appears to be kind of like a mainstream conservative. So what is it? Are you axing him for the 9/11 truth stuff? Is that why they're axing him? And if you're axing him for that, then are you going to get rid of all of the 9/11 truth stuff online? Because then you're opening a door to just saying, well, whatever we deem a conspiracy, we're going to get rid of. Then what about the JFK conspiracy, where over half the country thinks that the way the government describes it happening is not the way it happened? Are you going to get rid of that too? And what about when you guys say something is a conspiracy, but it's really not, and you're just cracking down on people who are saying the correct thing, but it's a small minority? Like, for example, the people who argued, hey, the WikiLeaks documents are correct. We now know what Hillary was saying behind closed doors about we need a public position and a private position. And the Iraq war is good for business. And the 1,000 things she said, like on free trade, we need totally free and open trade borders, which would be like NAFTA on steroids. The fact that the DNC was basically rigging it in favor of Hillary, and they were acting as an arm of the Hillary campaign to the point where she would get the final say on press releases for the DNC. All this stuff we learned. Now, at the time, they were trying to say, no, that's a conspiracy. And even if you say it's not a conspiracy, well, it came from Russia, and this is disinformation. This is a campaign of an attack on our election. You got to stop it. So you see where this can go wrong? You shouldn't give any outlet, any company, any board of leaders the ability to censor and deplatform, because once you do that, who's going to watch the Watchmen? Why do you assume they're always going to get it right? Why do you assume they're always going to have the purest of motives and intent? Why would you assume that? There's no reason to assume that. When you say we got to crack down on hate, well, listen, nobody wants to defend fucking ISIS. Nobody wants to defend Al-Qaeda. Nobody wants to defend the KKK. What happens when the right wing turns around and they say, well, listen, okay, you want to get rid of hate? Fine. Well, you got to get rid of Antifa. They just did an attack on somebody, or they did some property damage or something, and they're saying, we're going to attack the Nazi scum, yada, yada. You got to get rid of them. And you're saying, Kyle, that's hypothetical. No, it's not. Patreon already did this. Patreon axed some right-wing accounts, but then they turned around and they axed an Antifa account. So the problem is the principle you're buying into. That's what people need to get, and they don't get it, is that you're buying into a principle of, yeah, Go ahead. You guys, micromanage, and you determine who gets to stay, who doesn't get to stay, who gets to speak, who doesn't get to speak, what topics are okay and what topics are not okay. And once you do that, it's a free-for-all. So once they come for the right-wing groups, okay, boom. Then you got Antifa's going down. You got socialist gun owners going down. You got left-wing black identitarian movements that are going down, like the new Black Panther Party. All that stuff. I'm not saying there's an equivalence between the left-wing groups and the right-wing groups. What I'm saying is all anybody has to argue is that there is an equivalence between them, and then the people at the top are going to buy into it and go, okay, yeah, sure. Close enough. Well, we can't just act. And I've already heard people make the arguments. Well, 90-some-odd% or 70-some-odd% of the people you're banning are right-leaning. So there needs to be some sort of parity here. And then it's like they look for shit on the left to ban. See, see, we ban left-wingers too, so we're not biased against the right. You're opening the door to censorship and deplatforming. It will come back and bite you in the ass. And so when she says you got to police these platforms, you got to get rid of the hate, you got to stop the cyber warfare and misinformation, they literally argued that Black Lives Matter was a Russian plot. Well, the Russians are sowing racial discord in this country, and that's why we need to, stop this Russian misinformation campaign and this Russian troll shit. I'm telling you, man, they stop at nothing. When they open that door, you'd be surprised at how far they'll go. So my whole thing is, if you're on the left, you should be arguing first and foremost for basically having like a net neutrality thing for the social media companies. And what that means is expand the First Amendment to protect freedom of speech on social media because it's the new public square. So basically have a system where, yes, you can't do direct threats of violence. That's obvious. There are rules. It's not complete and utter anarchy. But if they're axing anybody, there's got to be a transparent process, and they basically have to prove that, hey, this is why we need to get rid of this person. You can't just willy-nilly do it and act like nothing. But instead, what's being argued for, left and right, is, no, let's allow some fucking nameless, faceless Silicon Valley oligarchs to determine who can and can't stay. Well, I got news for you. They're also biased. And they have their own opinions and their own beliefs and their own conflicts of interest. And we've already seen it in the case of Israel. They pull off on Facebook pro-Palestinian groups because Israel says you got to get rid of them because we say so. You think those things are not going on at the U.S. government? You think these heads of these companies are not listening to the U.S. government? Of course they are. Of course they are. So, fine. You want everything to be CNN? Everything will be CNN. That's what will happen. But if everything's CNN, man, it's going to be a fucking mess, and it's going to be terrible because they get shit wrong all the time. What do you do when it's a mainstream outlet that's pushing a conspiracy like Russiagate, and they turned out to be wrong? There was no evidence of collusion, according to the Mueller report. What then? Should all of them get banned? Should they all get banned when they pushed for the Iraq War, which was an illegal offensive war against a country that didn't attack us? Should they all get banned? If you're using their logic, they say yes. Because you're saying, hey, if they spread misinformation, if they're conspiracy theorists, if they spread hate, you gotta get rid of them. That led to the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people. The Iraq War propaganda that was dead wrong. Should they get pulled? The default position should be protect free speech. Only in rare instances can you take action against them. But instead, you got Kamala Harris and many others arguing, no, you better crack down more. You better be more authoritarian and censorious and be in favor of deplatforming. I disagree.